Dear Waiting Moms, welcome to another episode of Becoming Moms podcast. My name is Dr. Tien. I'm a pharmacist and a fertility coach, and I'm your host. After almost 2 years of my own trying to conceive journey with irregular cycles and insulin resistance, I can understand how challenging and lonely it is to be on this journey. And at the beginning of 2022, I was able to regulate my cycles and fall pregnant naturally, as well as improve my insulin resistance by lowering my A1C down to a normal range after only 6 weeks. I am now on a mission to help all of you waiting moms find a better, more balanced way to optimize your hormones and your body in order to increase your chances of conceiving without feeling like you have to be on any restrictive diet or crazy amount of medication or supplements. I know I don't want to do that, so I don't want you to have to go through that either. Okay, so let's get in today's episode. We're talking to Jennifer Edmonds today, you guys. She is the founder of In Your Element, a fertility podcast, and she specialized in fertility yoga. So I just wanted to give her a little bit of the floor right now to tell you guys a bit about her before we jump into our episode today.
Thank you, Tien. That's right. Well, as you mentioned, I am a Pilates and a yoga teacher, and I specialize in working in women's health and those who are struggling with fertility. I have a long fertility history of my own, which resulted in 2 healthy children. So I am extremely lucky. But I had both primary and secondary infertility, which is, always fun. But it was the second journey that was the really challenging one for me. I mean, they were both challenging, but that one really broke me. And it was in March of 2020. I remember our last IVF cycle hadn't been successful. And the day after we found that out, the world went into lockdown over COVID, and my city in particular shut down every fertility clinic. So after many years of treatments and struggling to complete my family, we just thought it was never going to happen. And it was around this time that I just really didn't know where to turn. I was sort of, trying to be grateful because I had a child. And even though that journey hadn't been easy, I was extremely lucky to have her. But we really wanted to have 2 kids and complete our family. But I guess that wasn't going to happen. But it was around this time as well that a colleague of mine recommended this thing called fertility yoga. And at first I was really skeptical because, I'd just been through countless treatments like IVF. How is a little bit of yoga going to help me? But we were in lockdown. My studios that I worked at were closed as well. So I really had not much else to do. So I agreed to give it a go. And one good thing that came out of COVID is that pretty much every fitness instructor around the world took their businesses online. And I had the opportunity to work with some people that I perhaps never would have been able to. So that was a bit of a blessing. And I found this incredible woman who taught me about my cycle and the different rhythms of each phase of the cycle and how to work with those and how yoga can fit in with those phases. And a few months later, I fell pregnant naturally. And that had never happened to me before. I was told by doctors it was basically not possible. And sadly, we lost that baby in the first trimester. But I was so inspired by what had happened that I decided to go and retrain as a yoga teacher and find a training school that offered fertility yoga teacher training. So I did all of that and I started studying and kept incorporating it into my life. And at the end of that year, I fell pregnant again. And that ended up being my little boy. So yes, it was a bit of a wild ride. And I just felt like I had stumbled upon something amazing. I had, like I said, been through so much treatment from the medical system, and it really didn't get me anywhere. But this beautiful, gentle, calming practice made such a difference. So I decided it was my mission to share it with as many people as I could. It is so accessible. It's something that it's very safe and gentle to do in the comfort of your own home. So it really appeals to women who are struggling to conceive, I find. It's not something you need to go to a studio to do. And so that's what I do now. And I guess that's what brings me to here today.
Yeah, that's so exciting. I didn't even know there was such a thing as fertility yoga. I was actually talking to one of the women in many of the Facebook groups. They have these support groups right online for women who are struggling to conceive. And she was mentioning to me that she had tried fertility yoga. So I was like, huh, interesting. That's that's new concept to me. How come in the past 2 years that I was trying to conceive in my own journey, I've never heard of this, even though I've been doing yoga since I was 20 and I'm 33 now. I don't teach yoga, but I do it on a daily basis just as a fitness thing, right? So I was wondering if doing that during my trying to conceive journey had any kind of, impact on my journey as well. And I was listening to one of your episode and you had said that during your training you were, trying to figure out the science behind it all. So can you kind of let us know what you found basically, like what was the science behind, like why does it work basically?
Sure. So I have to point out that fertility yoga isn't some fancy new form of yoga that myself or someone else has invented. It comes exactly from the ancient practices that you would all know of as yoga. But it's the way we match the poses and the practices to each phase of our menstrual cycle that makes it fertility yoga. So, for example, during menstruation, this is a time of rest. We complete restorative poses. There's a lot of gentle stretching and opening of the hips and the pelvis, but it is really soft and gentle. No inversions, no warrior poses, nothing energetic. As you move into the follicular phase and the ovulatory phase, that's where we start to increase the intensity. So your hormone levels are building. As you get towards ovulation, that's sort of the peak of your cycle, or sort of the peak level of where your hormones want to be. So we work with that increasing energy. And that's where the practice does become more intense. We do those warrior poses, lots of inversions, lots of deep squats to help bring that energy down, to encourage a healthy ovulation. And then after ovulation, we go into the luteal phase, or the 2-week wait if you're trying to conceive. And that's where, again, we start to bring the practice back to a more restorative and gentle form. So it doesn't mean that we are not exercising at all. It just means we're more considered with what we're choosing, letting that body rest. And if you are pregnant, you are hoping that you're supporting early pregnancy at this stage. So the poses that we do are there to nourish and support the reproductive organs, send blood flow down to the uterus, and just ease tension. We hold a lot of anxiety in our body in that time as well. So that's how fertility yoga works. And there's so many different practices and poses that we use at each phase of the cycle.
Right.
But yes, the science part about it really fascinated me. So I had been teaching Pilates for about 12 years by the time I found fertility yoga.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of clinical work, a lot of post rehabilitative work. So I had quite a strong exercise science background. So for me, yoga always seemed a bit woo and a bit boring. And I didn't understand why you would be lying around on the floor when you're in a class. To me, that was just a waste of time. I would think, can we just do some push-ups or something? Why am I wasting an hour when I could be exercising? I just didn't get it. But it turns out that yoga is one of the very few, I mean, there's a couple acupuncture as well, but one of the very few complementary therapies that has been studied extensively in Western medicine as well. And there's so many reasons for that. It is used in a lot of clinical settings in terms of trauma rehabilitation, those who have been through traumatic experiences or who have PTSD. It's worked with people who have anxiety and depression. So you'll find a lot of clinical therapists will use it as well. So there's a few reasons. I'll go through three main reasons why it has such an impact on your overall health and specifically your fertility. So the first is it's exercise. And, everyone is very aware of the well-researched reasons that exercise is beneficial for us. It increases your immunity, increases your cardiovascular health, improves blood flow. We all know that exercise is good for us. So yoga, thankfully, fits into that category as well. So we get all the benefits of that. But the more specific things about yoga that make it helpful for fertility are a little bit more nuanced. I don't think there is any other form of exercise that uses the breath in quite the way yoga does. And I'm a Pilates teacher too, and I don't think the breath is used in Pilates as well as it is in yoga, because there are so many different breath patterns and techniques that we can use. And if you think about someone who is going through infertility or any kind of stressful thing in their life, they're in a state of fight or flight or a state of increased stress at a lot of the time. And whilst you've got all of those stress hormones pumping through your body, you've got cortisol, adrenaline, norepinephrine, all of these hormones keep you in this dysregulated state. And when you are in a state of fight or flight, your brain doesn't understand there's a difference between I'm terrified that this next embryo transfer isn't going to work, and maybe there's a lion around the corner that's about to eat me. It doesn't understand that there's a difference. One is life or death and one isn't, but your brain doesn't know that. So your brain thinks that it's in a life or death situation a lot of the time when you are in an increased state of stress. So what happens then is your body gets ready to either fight, flee, or hide. And to do this, you recruit the big muscles in your body. All of the blood flow goes away from the internal organs. It goes into the arms, the legs to get ready to run or to fight. And your body will shut down all of these non-essential processes that it needs for immediate survival. So, for example, you don't need to digest your lunch if you're about to run away from tiger, or you don't need critical thinking. I need to solve this really challenging maths equation. That's not important.
Yeah.
We don't need to fight off a virus in that moment. And we also don't need to procreate, ovulating and worrying about our future isn't really an issue at that stage. So everything that goes into surviving in a fight or flight state means that other parts of the body are affected. So fortunately for a lot of us, that means that over time we have gut issues, we end up with sleep issues and reproductive issues. It's just one of the things that contributes. So when you are in a state of fight or flight, the one thing you have control of in any moment is your breath.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you start to slow down your breath, your brain will realize that you are safe.
Mm-hmm.
If you are taking nice, slow, deep breaths and, perhaps holding that breath, closing your eyes, there's no chance that you're about to be eaten by a tiger. Your brain will recognize that that's no
Right.
longer a stressful situation. So the more we do this, the more it helps to remind our brains that we are safe, and the less it will start to produce these stress hormones, and the less it will have an impact on all of these other parts of the body. And so yoga does an amazing job of that. Every movement has a breath connected to it. We usually start a yoga practice with our breath, and that's the way we finish it as well. And it's really intentional breath. It's about being present and noticing how the breath feels within the body. I've been someone with chronic asthma my whole life, but it wasn't until I started practicing yoga that I really noticed symptoms of my asthma starting to improve as well. And I think that being able to breathe really intentionally and fully has a huge, huge impact on that. So that's kind of a lot to throw in there. But so you've got the exercise component, which is
Right.
great. And then you've got this ability to really work with your breath and calm your nervous system. And then the third part is not just the breathing, but everything else that we do within a yoga practice is able to help regulate your nervous system. And your nervous system is that part of your brain that's always on guard for looking for safety or danger. Is this safe? Is this dangerous? And when you are in fight or flight a lot, it's activated and it thinks that you are in danger. So these poses that we do in fertility yoga,
It's Dr. Promlab here, interrupting your episode. I do have an announcement that I think will be super exciting and beneficial for you, especially if it doesn't cost anything, right? So I actually have a free Facebook community for waiting moms out there just like you. And this is where I provide a lot of extra additional free training in more in-depth details than I'm able to do here on the podcast. So we've actually had a training recently on insulin resistance, and I had a whole multiple ones on egg quality, what you actually need to be eating to improve your egg quality, things like that, like nutrition, what to eat, so much more too on there in this little community. And I do these training once a month in my free Facebook group that you can join that doesn't cost you anything. And you actually get to meet other waiting moms just like yourself to share the journey that you guys are on and keeping each other supported, keeping each other accountable on doing all the things that will be so beneficial for you and your new baby to help you really optimize your body and your hormones to be the perfect place for as a future home for your baby for the next 9 months, right? And these little trainings are designed to help you get pregnant even sooner than most people who wouldn't have access to these trainings, right? So when you enter the community, make sure though you answer my question before joining. I have a lot of people trying to join but don't answer any of my questions. I decline them immediately because I actually want this community to be exclusive for people who are serious about their condition, about their health, and about their trying to conceive journey. I want to be able to tailor this group into what would be the best for you. So these questions are meant to help me help you even more. So if you answer them and you'll get in immediately, right? It just shows me that you are serious about this journey and you're serious about your health, and you're not just here to look at information, but you're here to actually ready to learn, and you're ready to start that next chapter of your life and starting your pregnancy journey instead of just waiting and waiting and waiting to see when it will be your turn, right? And I know this really overwhelming and lonely sometime on this journey. That's why I create this free community, and I really hope that you decide to join us. So I'll put the link to join my free Facebook community in the description of the podcast. So make sure you check that out, and I can't wait to see you in the community.
For example, inversions where your hips are higher than your heart. These poses, they reverse the flow of blood. So, obviously, normally you're upright and your body is circulating, but when you invert, the blood flows towards the heart. And what this does is sends more blood towards the brain, the pituitary gland, the hypothalamus, nourishes all of the glands that are around the brain, brings more blood flow to the thyroid, which again, really important gland for overall health and fertility. And it also increases the circulation of lymph within the body, the lymphatic system, which is your body's ability to fight off toxins, viruses, bacteria. So it has amazing health benefits doing these beautiful inverted postures. All of the other work that we do in yoga as well is either working to increase circulation, so throughout the whole body, but particularly with fertility yoga, we can bring circulation to the reproductive organs for both women and for men. And to combine all of that together, it has just such a profound overall effect on your system. So when you leave a class, you have this beautiful sense of calm. And I know you do when you go to a yoga class normally. But because we're working with each phase of the cycle, we know that we are supporting the body with exactly what it needs at each phase. So you are left with this feeling of being more grounded, feeling less, anxious and stressed, less like you could react to the smallest thing that, someone cuts you off in traffic or someone's running 10 minutes late for an appointment, these things that tend to make us spiral when we're experiencing stressful situations. So So that's a very long answer, and I could probably talk about this for a very long time, but I'll leave it at that.
Right. No, I love it because, like I said, I've been practicing yoga ever since college. I didn't really know what it was, but it was kind of like an easy A class for me when I first started. I'm like, okay, yoga sounds easy. I'm gonna take that because I don't want to do anything crazy, right? But I still need my kinesiology credit to graduate. But then I fell in love with it because it was just so calming and all of the poses, and you actually gain a lot of strength, doing all of those poses. I had zero physical, like, before going into this, and I gained so much from it. And now, as an adult and, practicing yoga just as my leisure, I would tell my friends and my clients to try yoga. Like I tell them this all the time. They're like, I just don't think there's much to it. Like I want to sweat during my exercise. I want to do something like feel like I did the work. And I'm telling them, you will do the work if you try yoga. But this is really bring it back to why it was so helpful for me. Probably I was just doing, normal yoga practices at the time. There was some inversion that I did, which was interesting, that it helps, bring the blood flow to all the organs that would actually help you nourish your nervous system. And then that actually helped with the hormone balances a lot of the time, because I talk about that with my client and on, all my resources. And I recently had another woman who were told by her doctor that basically they gave her a diagnosis of infertility, which, I don't really like that term, but a lot of doctor would throw that around, right? So I wanted to get your point of view on, when a woman is being diagnosed with infertility, like would this be something that would definitely help them increase their chance of conceiving?
Mm. Look, the big answer to that is yes, but I'll break it down a little bit more. So, infertility is such a big word. And I think when people are diagnosed with that, really what the doctor means is subfertility. So we're not ideally fertile. For example, I had a whole bunch of fertility issues, but one of them, each of them on their own weren't really the end of the world, but adding all of them together, I think that's what created all of our fertility problems. So it depends on what the issues are. For example, if someone has blocked fallopian tubes, yes, there are some yoga poses that some of the research can point to perhaps being able to help open those tubes, but that is not a claim I would ever want to make with a student. So if
Mm.
you really are not fertile because of some structural concern, like you don't have tubes, or perhaps your partner, can't get the sperm to where it needs to go, then no amount of yoga is going to fix that problem. Things like IVF are going to be the only option. But especially when it comes to male factor infertility, probably about 30% of my students who are women are doing IVF because it's their partner who is the one who's got the fertility issue. It becomes a women's problem as soon as you go down the medical path, because what are all the treatments?
Mm.
They're all done to the woman.
Yep.
And then there's all this pressure that it has to work. And, yes, it's the male factor, but now it's my body, and I have to be the one that makes this happen. And that's so stressful. So, I find that the male factor makes a big difference on the woman as well, because all of that goes, you're going through the hormones, the injections, the surgeries, the endless appointments, so doing something like a yoga or meditation practice helps you to bring that calm back into your body. In terms of other conditions, so the conditions I see it working best for, here's where I'm going to get a little bit woo. A lot of the unexplained infertility women,
Mm.
kind of, they're a reasonably young age. There's nothing major. It's everything on paper looks great. They've had investigations they've gone for, but it just isn't happening for whatever reason.
Mm.
And for some women, whether you believe this or not, some people think that is somewhere there's a mental block on being able to conceive. And, whether that rings true for you or not,
Okay.
sometimes just being on your mat and being with your body and knowing that you're capable, and just knowing that it isn't anything that you've done, and maybe something in the past has triggered these feelings of I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, I can't do this, it's never going to happen. To be able to work around those and to remind yourself that you are capable. Sometimes yoga can give that to people as well. The other thing I see it working well for is for hormonal imbalance concerns like PCOS. Some women with things like low progesterone who have like a shorter luteal phase. Um, uh, there's the diagnosis of poor egg quality that gets thrown around a lot as well. And all of these practices, from what I have read, I believe have a direct impact on egg quality, because one of the worst things that you can do for your egg health is to produce stress hormones. That has a huge impact on how well you're going to ovulate, how strong that ovulation will be, and how much progesterone you'll produce after ovulation. So the more you can bring your body into that state of regulation, the less stress hormones you're going to produce, the easier your body will be at producing a high quality egg and ovulating well. So there are a lot of different concerns that we can work around with fertility yoga. And I wish so much that it was, a magic pill, or it was a quick and easy solution. But at the base of my work, really, my job is to support women through this time, and the increased health benefits are a massive bonus. But really, it's finding ways to get through it and to support your body and your mental health at the same time.
Yeah, no. My next question is actually relating to regulating hormones and cycle, like you were mentioning for women with PCOS, because that's the majority of my audience and the majority of my clients. And actually, so I don't have a medical diagnosis of PCOS, but I have irregular cycle all my life. Like
Mm,
it would come twice a year ever since I
mm,
got my period, when I was like 12 or 13. And I was put on birth control like pretty much immediately to
mm,
regulate that, because that's just like the common treatment for that, right? So I've been on birth control forever and ever. And once I got off of it, cycle didn't appear, right? And I'm like, okay, are we waiting forever or what? And it finally came back 6 months later. And I'm like, okay, so that's a good sign, right? And then, but it was gone again. So I kept having this irregular cycle. So that's one of my symptoms that I thought maybe PCOS. Okay. And then another thing was, this is after I gone to my doctor and say, hey, we've been trying for a couple years. Well, maybe that's been a year at the time. I don't remember. Can we run some tests to see what's going on? And then they found out that my A1C level, which is related to your blood sugar, diabetes, some people would use that to measure, was in the pre-diabetes range. So they were saying, okay, so maybe you have insulin resistance. So that's
mm,
probably PCOS, because that's also part of one of the criteria that you can be diagnosed with PCOS. So they sent me to do a intravaginal scan to see if there's any cysts in my ovaries, so because that's another criteria, right, that you would be diagnosed with PCOS. But they found nothing, there was no cysts or anything like that, and I'm not a bigger girl, so a lot of time overweight is something they would pin PCOS on. So on and all, they didn't give me the diagnosis of PCOS. I'm like, okay, so what's wrong with me? Like, I don't know what's going on. So I was just
mm,
prescribed a medication for ovulation induction, so letrozole, as you probably know, and then they also gave me Provera to start my period because I hadn't had it for a while. But I ended up not using those medication because I wanted to just try it naturally first. I just feel like medication, and as a pharmacist, I know there's side effects and they don't work 100% of the time, and I just didn't want to worry about the chances that it's not working. It's probably going to stress me out even more, right? So anyway, so bring it back to the question of what you think fertility yoga could really help balance the hormones, like, because then I find that if I have irregular cycle, right, and I have insulin resistance, there's some sort of hormone imbalancing somewhere in my body. That's when I kind of went into more nutrition help and what I can do to help balance my hormones. But not really thinking about fertility yoga as an option as well. If doing both of that together is probably going to increase a lot of women's chances to conceive a lot faster and a lot sooner, right?
Mm. A large number of my students have PCOS. And it's such a frustrating diagnosis because, like you said, they have had symptoms since they were teenagers and they got thrown on the pill, like we all did, thinking that was the magic cure for everything. And then we all stopped taking the pill a decade or two later. And lo and behold, our cycle is still a mess. And you're left in this place where you could have been working with your body, those last 10 years, but you weren't given the opportunity. So I find that incredibly frustrating, but that's it's a talk for another day. So I'm talking about all these things around cycle syncing and working these practices with your cycle, but what do you do if you don't have a cycle? And that's a big question as well.
Hello, hello. It's Dr. Pramlab here interrupting your episode to let you know that I actually have a full training on how to regulate your cycle to increase your pregnancy chance in less than 6 months. So, this is a free training that I have created for you all to really focus on what you can do daily to help you improve your ovulation and insulin resistance if you have it. It actually will provide you with a no fail strategy to help you transform your relationship with your PCOS symptoms without any restrictive diet. A lot of the time, I hear that P- patient with PCOS can feel super tired and have no energy, or insomnia, things like that. All of that really are based on your hormone imbalances, and we're going to go over that to figure out what hormone triggers you have in order for you to work with your body, and not have to be on a restrictive diet. You're also actually going to get a step-by-step guide to regulate your ovulation and cycles. I know with PCOS, a lot of the time you do have an irregular cycle. I know for me, I would only get one cycle every 6 months. So even when I was trying to conceive, I wasn't ovulating. So I wasn't even trying at all, really. And I went from only having 2 cycles per year to actually having 6 to 8 cycles per year, which is pretty good for me. And we're going to go over exactly how I did that. And finally, we're going to touch on key changes that you can make so you can optimize your body and your hormones without having to take a ton of medication or supplements. I didn't take any medication or supplements while I was trying to conceive because I just felt like nutrition was a better and more natural way of doing things. And it really helped me a lot. And I know it can help you too. So maybe you are just starting out on your trying to conceive journey and you're just a bit confused on what exactly you need to do. Or if you've been on this journey for a while and you've tried everything under the sun just to get that big fat positive pregnancy test, but no matter what you do, you're not getting the result that you want, right? And actually, no matter where you are on your trying to conceive journey, right? All you want to do is to meet your baby and to have that family that you've always dreamed of. So, if you want to achieve this dream, you want to make this dream a reality, and you want access to this free training that I have for you, all you have to do is go to drpromlabwellnesscorner.com/free dash training and go ahead and watch this amazing free training and let me know if you found this helpful at all for you. I like to know if I can make it even better for you in the future, or if you found that it was helpful now, let me know what you liked about it. And you can always just send me a message on social at Dr. Promlat Wellness Corner. Okay, well, let's get back into today's episode.
So there's two things we need to do. The first of all, there is a reason that your body isn't ovulating. And I think that working with more of an allied health practitioner, perhaps a naturopath or a functional medicine doctor that will run a few more deeper tests to perhaps see what nutrient deficiencies are there, see what hormone deficiencies are there. Especially for women, there are some amazing tests out there now that can tell you a lot of information. But I work with women who haven't had a period for all sorts of reasons. Maybe it's hypothalamic amenorrhea, so that's often comes from under eating, over exercising for a long period of time. Women with eating disorders, we can have amenorrhea from coming off the pill. When I came off the pill, when I was trying to conceive, I didn't have a diagnosis of PCOS ever, but I didn't have my period for more than 18 months. And we ended up going through IVF. Of course, letrozole and Clomid didn't even work. So there are so many reasons for you to not have a period. So the first thing we need to do is wake up that connection between the brain and the ovaries. So there are practices that we do that start to increase that blood flow. Like I talked about before, we do a number of inversions, and inversions are not always difficult. They're not these fancy acrobatic handstands that you see on Instagram. They're things like downward facing dog, which I think everybody is familiar with, and bridge pose, where you're laying on your back and just raising your hips off the floor. Really simple stuff like that. So, that starts to bring that blood flow back to the glands around the brain, which I talked about before. And blood flow is so important because, as a pharmacist, you well know this, but blood is your body's delivery system for nutrients and hormones. So when there is increased blood flow through these glands, they have that opportunity to then carry the hormones to the rest of the body and where they need to go more easily. The practices that we do for regaining a cycle are a little bit more energetic. So we want to increase your heart rate. We want to kind of get that blood pumping. They're not exhaustive. It's not like running a marathon or anything like that, but they are quite intense compared to some of the other things we do. So that's one part of it. But at the same time, there's also an element of perhaps increased cortisol, especially if you have insulin resistance within your body. It's likely that there are higher stress levels, so higher stress hormone levels happening as well. So that's something that we need to work on. So it's a balance of, yes, waking up your endocrine system, getting blood flowing, but also reminding your body again that you're safe and coming into that restorative practice, which is, oftentimes very hard to do. When you've got an hour or half an hour in your day and you think, I need to do something for myself, you think about doing something active, but sometimes the best thing you can do is to stop and slow down, breathe, do these really gentle mobility practices like cat-cow and pigeon pose and butterflies and things to open out the hips. Yeah, nice stuff.
Yeah.
So it's a combination, getting that blood flowing and then again, doing some restorative work as well. So I tend to alternate it a little bit as well. There's one more practice that I'll mention because yoga is wonderful at spanning both the scientific side of things and also the more woo-woo or out there side of things. So there's a practice you can do called moon cycling. And whether you believe in this or not, I have seen amazing things happen. So there's no coincidence that the moon cycle and the woman's menstrual cycle are about the same length. So traditionally about 28 days. The 4 phases of the moon correspond to the 4 phases of the menstrual cycle. So during the full moon, that's your ovulation. And during the dark moon or the new moon, that's your menstruation. And the moon is really powerful. I mean, our bodies are made up of so much water, and the moon has such a powerful effect on the water on the Earth's surface. So it does affect us in a lot of ways. So a lot of people find that if they don't have a cycle, they use the moon and they work with that. So when it's a full moon, they do ovulation practices. And then during the waning moon, they do their 2-week wait practices. And then when they get to the new moon, they do their menstrual phase practices. So if anyone's interested in this, you can just do a Google search, just go moon cycling. And I mean, you can find a moon calendar anywhere online. There's a bunch of free apps. It's very easy to find out when there's a full moon. So, it's a way to kind of get in touch with something a little bigger than yourself. I feel like it's worth a go if it's something that I wish I had found it sooner. Actually, I didn't learn about moon cycling until I was well into my second fertility journey, where my cycle wasn't actually a problem. unfortunately, we just had a whole bunch of additional problems. But if I had found it the first time, I think I would have given it a go and just sort of seen how it worked for a few months, you know. So
Yeah.
there are some options.
I mean, in this point of time, like a lot of women have been trying everything already and gone through multiple rounds of, letrozole or IUIs, even IVFs. So honestly, I think this is like no harm done here, right? Trying fertility yoga as an additional
Mm.
benefits for helping them conceiving. And if they want to learn more and learn like which practices they should be doing in which phase of their cycle. I know you have a YouTube page because I've seen some videos on that. I think I've done one actually a few months ago. Is that would be the best place they would find, or do you feel like there's other resources
Mhm.
that you would recommend for
Mm.
anyone who's interested?
So I have a free fertility yoga guide, which I'll send you a copy of, and you can share the link with your followers. So it does link to my YouTube channel, but it explains how to use the videos on the YouTube channel in a more specific way. So the fertility yoga guide is for anyone who is trying to conceive either naturally or with letrozole, Clomid, even IUI. However, it won't help you if you are doing IVF. If you are doing IVF, your doctor will usually say to you avoid exercise, and
Mm,
when doctors say that, they're meaning things like don't go and do a hard workout at the gym, don't go and do CrossFit or a spin class or a HIIT workout. And there are a lot of practices in yoga that we don't want to do during IVF because the ovaries are so swollen. You have to be so careful with the body. So if you are going through IVF and you want to practice fertility yoga, I would connect with someone who really knows what they're doing. So yeah, people can message me for advice if that's what they're doing. But if you're not at that stage or you're doing other treatments, you can work with the normal fertility yoga practices. So yes, the guide will show you how to track your cycle if you're not sure about which phase you're in or how to know what phase you're in at each stage of the month. It'll go through how to do that. And then there's a practice for each phase as well. And I also go through a few different meditation techniques, and there's a breathwork practice that you can follow in there as well. So it's a really lovely way to get started. And the thing I like about some of these practices is, when you go to a yoga studio or a gym, usually the class is 60 or 90 minutes. It's a really big chunk of your day. But I think that's not accessible for everybody. So the practices that I have start from 15 minutes. And I think it's being able to incorporate shorter amounts of time into your day and then being able to do that more regularly rather than, oh, okay, maybe once a week I can go and do an hour class.
right.
That little consistent effort more often has a really, really big impact overall. And I find that when people start these little practices around, I'll do 15 minutes here, 20 minutes there, they realize how great they feel afterwards. And that's when they start making more time to do a longer practice. So, yeah, I offer practices everywhere from 15 minutes to an hour. So it's good to be able to pick and choose and see what fits into your day.
That's super lovely, and thank you so much for that guide, and I will definitely share that with my audience, and, I'll put a link and everything in the podcast description, guys, so if you are looking for that guide, look into description. And then I wanted to also, ask if they wanted to, reach out and work more with you. I know you're based in Australia, but I'm guessing everything is virtual nowadays,
It
so
is.
I'm hoping you do have some sort of way for people to work with you if they wanted to reach out, right?
Yes, of course. So, yes, you can connect with me. Probably Instagram is the best way. But I also am on TikTok. My handle is jen.element Pilates Yoga. But you can also go to my website and see all of my offerings as well, which is elementpilatesyoga.com. And I'll send you all the links. But I have various online courses that you can participate in. There is a fertility course, an IVF course, there's a combined one. And I also have an online program for those who want to do live classes and live coaching as well. So
Mm.
3 times a week, I do live group classes with my members and students, which is such a lovely way to kind of check in and see how people are feeling and kind of gauge the practices that they need at each time. And the practices are always safe no matter where you are in your cycle or what fertility treatments you're going through. So I will give you all the links to those options as well.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for all of that. And I think one last question I just popped in my head was, if you were wanting to practice this, by yourself at home, following your guide, do you recommend this every day? I'm guessing the guy would answer that, or is it more like every other day, or is there like a particular schedule
Mm.
that
I
you?
like to give the guide of 3 days a week initially.
Okay.
So 3 times a week is a really consistent way to start seeing results without it being overwhelming. However, if you do love the practices and you want to do it more often, that's completely fine. But I would say maximum 6 days a week. Even
Mm,
though the practices are not exhaustive or exhausting, they still, you want to keep a day just to let your body really rest and settle. So 3 times a week is a good guide, but up to 6 if you're feeling that's what you'd prefer.
that's cool. Yeah, I think 3 times a week is what I normally recommend for my clients as well. And then in between, they can do other things if they wanted to, right? Okay.
Mm,
Yeah, because I do
absolutely.
also, recommend more. A lot of the women who I work with want to lose weight. So that's like their
Mm.
main concern with PCOS. Like they're kept telling me, the weight won't come off because of PCOS and hormone imbalances. So I also recommend, a little bit more cardio workout. Would that be safe to incorporate in between fertility yoga?
Yes, the exercise on a wider level is can be a big conversation. Basically, I I go through this in my courses quite a lot, but if you do have a regular cycle and you are following a fertility yoga approach, you want to ensure that any other exercise that you're doing in your life follows that same approach. So, whilst it might be great to do beautiful restorative practices during your period, if you're also then going to the gym and doing a spin class during your period, it negates the whole point. So always rest during your period. During your follicular phase and your ovulatory phase, that's where cardio is most beneficial,
Mm.
especially when you get to ovulation. Those HIIT workouts, those spin classes, those are the things that are perfect for that time. Then during the luteal phase or the 2 week wait, sort of slower weight training, walks, things like that, things that aren't going to be spiking your heart rate so much.
Mm.
Reason that we want to keep the exercise balanced along with the yoga practice is that if you push yourself during menstruation or the luteal phase, you're trying to recruit energy that your body doesn't have. The hormones and the energy isn't there. Especially during your period, you are working so hard just to let your uterus shed the lining from the previous month. That takes so much energy. And if you go and expend extra energy doing high intensity exercise, that increases the level of stress within your system. So increased stress hormones mean the rest of your cycle is affected. So that's why we want to kind of work around that. For women who have PCOS, because obviously weight loss is a component of that, and especially doctors always harp on about it, whether or not I agree with that being the reason they haven't gotten pregnant. And,
Uh-huh.
um,
Yeah.
yes, things like walking is amazing. Just walking is one of the best forms of exercise for women who are trying to conceive anyway, especially if you can get outdoors and do your walks. I know that's not possible in everywhere in the world, but being out in nature and fresh air has a huge impact on your nervous system. It's great for increasing blood flow. It's low impact and it elevates your heart rate without spiking it, without, increasing those intense sort of levels. So it's safe pretty much all times of the month. Weight training is fantastic, especially for women. And weight training has benefits far beyond the hour or half an hour that you're doing the exercise. You're increasing your muscle capacity, your resilience to stress, all of these wonderful things. So I would go weight training over intense cardio for
Mm.
PCOS, but at the same time, we do need a bit of cardiovascular exercise in there as well. So it's a tricky balance, and that's where we really want to work with someone who knows kind of how to work with that cycle, especially if you don't have a regular cycle. You don't want to be over exercising because that's going to stress your system out even more.
Mm.
It's a big topic. If anyone wants to get in contact with me and ask some more specific questions about that, they're very welcome to.
Awesome. Well, I think you share so much information with us today, and we're so thankful for you to join us today on this episode. Super, super special. And I hope that you guys found this episode really, really helpful. And please reach out to either one of us if you have any question, and I'll drop all the links in our description. Well, that's all for today's episode of Becoming Moms. I hope you really enjoyed it and you found it helpful. And if you resonate with everything that I talked about today and you feel like you want to learn more, you want to learn how to truly create sustainable changes that will ensure that you will be able to effortlessly fall pregnant and find freedom from dieting, freedom from killing yourself over at the gyms days in and days out, freedom from all those medication and supplements that you're currently on, so you can stop worrying about your future and stop worrying about if you ever become a mom and start enjoying your baby making journey again. Start living your dream as your reality, right? That probably is just going to have the family that you've always wanted instead of constantly living fear and feel stuck on your trying to conceive journey. Then I really invite you to connect with me. I want to get to know you better and I want to show you how I can make all of that happen for you, right? We'll actually chat for 45 whole minutes where we'll hash out a strategic plan to help you see that regulating your cycles and ovulation isn't all that impossible anymore. But I'll only want you to reach out if you feel like you are 110% committed to your health and that you are ready to take massive action to make it happen, okay? Because we can both talk and talk until we're both blue in the face, but if you are not willing to invest in your health, not willing to invest in yourself, then nothing we can say can really change anything, right? So if you really think that is you and you are ready to see where your powerful self can really take you, then all you gotta do is go to drpromlatwellnesscorner.com/apply and book a free roadmap call with me. I am committed to you and your health, and I will work with you until you are successful. During the session, we will evaluate where your strengths are and what's currently working for you, and then we'll take a look at what we can improve upon, as well as mapping out a plan for you to get there. And then if you are a really good fit, I'll actually offer you a spot in my Becoming Moms community where we will work further with you on how to create a more sustainable and less restrictive way so you can actually optimize your hormones in your body to increase your chances of conceiving without having to think about if you'll ovulate this month at all. Also, make sure to fill out the little short survey attached to our call before the session. So I have a bit of a background on you to better prepare and plan for our session to make sure that you will get the most out of your time with me. Okay, well, I can't wait to speak with you soon. Until then, sending you lots of baby dust.